My name is Ryan Murray, and this is my ULAB presentation. My ULAB covered Unity 3D and the terrain tools within Unity 3D. The goals of my ULAB were that the user needs to understand the Unity 3D terrain tool user interface, and the user also needs to use the user interface time efficiently. Tasks. The scenario that I gave my user was that they were a level designer for a game studio, and their project team decided to use the Unity 3D game engine for their next game. They were in charge of creating the world within the game, but they have never used the game engine before. So our user decided to open up Unity and get a head start and try and figure out what to do. The first task we gave our user was to look at the Unity overlay and have them speak their thoughts and let us know what they think. After they finished with that, they were told to just click through the menus and see what's going on, see what interests them, what they didn't like, and again, we had them talk out loud. Task 2, we created a terrain plate. We had the user create a terrain plate, access the terrain plate's inspector, and then look through the terrain plate tools, the UI buttons, to get a feel of what's what, and try and hopefully figure out, what button does what. Once they were done, they were to raise their hand, or if they had any issues, they were to raise their hand. Task 3 is actually manipulating the terrain plate that they created before. They were to use every button, every UI button, every tool that was given in Unity. And once they were done manipulating the terrain, the actual elevations, they were to add textures, and we were going to tell them how to add textures into the game. Metrics and baseline. At the end, we asked them a few questions about how easy it was for them to create a terrain plate. How were things labeled, and then again, we wanted to know how often do they feel stuck and how many times that they raised their hand. We kept note of that. We also looked at facial expressions, hesitations, hands raised, verbal communications, how many times they click back and forth between different UI buttons. So these are our true user findings from ULAB B. Our true user recognized a lot of the UI from previous game engines. There were slight variations within the images used, but they were able to figure it out. They quickly ran through the menus and they understood the UI layout for the most part. For task 2, the user created the terrain plate without any issues. They did it on the first try. They didn't raise their hand at all during this task as they went through the terrain and were understanding the terrain tools. Task 3, the user immediately manipulated the terrain. They wanted to do it in task 2, but we told them to wait. They didn't have any problems raising their hand. They made a really good looking terrain for not using Unity before. They also found out how to add textures into the Unity engine, be able to the directories of the textures, and actually painted textures on the map to make it even better. So we didn't even have to tell them. So that was good news for us, and that they understood how to do that without us even telling them. They created a terrain plate pretty easily. They said they gave it a 10 out of 10. They said the labels were marked clearly, but again, they could do Unity could do a little better with labeling how the buttons look. They did not get stuck very often, and they didn't raise their hand at all except for when they were done with the task. So they felt pretty good overall about the UI and the terrain tools. So the results were greater than I expected. The user said previous game engine knowledge really helped them out in completing these tasks, and that he didn't hesitate very often, and he knew what to do. Again, the Unity terrain tools are great, but the images that they use for buttons could be a little bit better to help better represent what they do. So overall, that is my recommendation. is that Unity needs better images to help represent what the buttons do for newer users of the game engine.